is the pre-application conference meeting. It is not mandatory, but I appreciate your participation and can tell you've actually taken a review of the application to know about this opportunity. I will just turn it over briefly to Sybil to provide an overview of a couple of different items that are important in consideration of your application. And then we will take a review of the application and highlight some of the changes or perhaps things that would be of interest to you. We won't go into detail on every aspect of the program guidelines, but we will review those, having opportunity for questions throughout and at the end of that portion of the meeting. And then we'll actually, for those who are interested, walk through the online application portal, how to set up an account if you don't have one, the login process, and then highlight for you some of the changes from the existing application and how you would go about completing that activity. At that point, you're certainly more than able to drop off if you feel experienced enough in the application portal, but wanted to give everyone the opportunity to see that information again. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Sybil.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Sybil Tate, one of the assistant county managers here in Buncombe County, and I work closely with Matt and his team in the Community Development Division. And I just want to share a broad overview and some exciting new things coming to the department. So as you know, the Affordable Housing Committee or a subcommittee is made up of 3 commissioners from our full board. And the primary role of the subcommittee is to provide oversight to an annual funding allocation, which is part of our budget process. However, this year, after we finished our budget process, they asked us to begin a goal setting program. And so that's what we've been working on a lot for the past 6 months. If you've attended any of our meetings, you will have heard a lot of discussion about goal setting. And so I just wanted to share a brief overview of those goals because they'll be important for you as you're working on your application. And do keep in mind that these are draft goals. We're still not done, unfortunately. But anytime you can impact any of the items on this slide, and call that out in your application, it would be very helpful for us. This is a very ambitious goal of 2,800 units by 2030. So we've got 8 years to be this impactful. And we're going to need all of our partners, who are you, working together to help us achieve that. I do want to also draw your attention to the fact that the most ambitious goals, I believe, in this draft goal is the 1,500 rental units, with 1,200 of those units being funded with tax credit programs. And then also the ownership units for households under 80% AMI. So again, anything you can do to help us work towards these goals, we greatly appreciate it. And then the next slide is really just want to bring your attention to the fact that because of this goal setting process, it's really caused us to have a somewhat different vision for this department. And it's created an opportunity for us to hire more staff to achieve these goals. And so I did want to draw your attention to that. We are going to be bringing on 3 new staff members soon, and then we'll have another vacancy that's going to be filled a little bit later. So if you know anyone who might be interested in these positions, 3 of them are posted now on our website. So please help us recruit for these positions. And we do want to, in the future, provide an opportunity, hopefully in person if COVID allows, down the road for you all to interact with these new staff folks and get to know them. A part of our vision for this division is really developing these relationships. As I pointed out, we have these ambitious goals. We can't do it without you. And so we do want to create some sort of recurring meetings where we can meet, quarterly or at least twice a year and get together and share information with you all and really have an open dialogue as we try to move forward with these goals. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Matt.
All right. And I will acknowledge that I'm working from home, so I have a single screen. So sharing is a little bit more challenging. I just want to confirm everybody can see the presentation materials. All right. So that's good. Okay, so our proposed schedule, as you, again, being here, it shows that you're aware of the release of the RFP. The RFP was released in December. Applications are due at 5 p.m. on February 11th. That's a Friday. At that point, staff will begin the review of the applications, and in March and April, the Affordable Housing Committee will undertake a process of reviewing those applications as well. At the end of that time frame, by April 30th, the committee will need to make recommendations in order for the funding allocations to be considered as part of the budget process. And then that will all flow through the regular budgeting process, which occurs in May and June. In terms of potential funding, at this point, we don't have an exact idea, again, because the application process will actually drive the recommendations coming out of the committee and then the decisions made at the Board of Commissioners level. But as a point of perspective, if there were no change in the allocation of general fund dollars from the current fiscal year, we would anticipate approximately $2.3 million would be available in next year's round of funding. As I said, I'm not going to walk through every part of the program guidelines, which are available on the website, buncombecounty.org/affordable housing, and also available through the application itself. But I did want to point out, some of the highlights, and you're going to see consistency with those draft goals that Sybil just presented to the group. But the program itself supports construction loans, down payment assistance loans, tenant-based rental assistance, construction grants for non-revenue generating projects, emergency repair programs, and new starts. Within the program guidelines are strategic goals. And again, they're in alignment with that activity that the committee is undertaking now. And you can see that particularly in the strategic goal number 1, which is to preserve and increase the stock of affordable housing. Second is to reduce substandard housing and expand opportunities for home repair. The third, supporting homeownership initiatives, including savings, credit building, and down payment assistance. And the fourth, addressing issues of homelessness. There were a couple of items which were added and which seemed pertinent to call your attention to with regard to the project priorities section of the program description. Language was included regarding preference for projects. Strong preference will be given to projects that demonstrate an intent to leverage other sources of debt, equity, or other funding prior to and beyond the Affordable Housing Services Program. This funding is generally intended to be considered gap financing or gap funding for your project. In most cases, we are not the only funder in a program or project. And then particularly with regard to projects for construction where you're a developer, there would be a strong preference for projects that demonstrate a willingness to consider deferring developer fees. There is specific language regarding projects which are less preferred among a group of applications that were received. And really those are applicants that are only seeking program admin support or where the portion of administrative support is high relative to project costs. One exception to that category is the New Start program, which can be largely or wholly administrative. But seeking a good balance of administrative costs to project delivery cost is desired. With regard to project priorities, these are listed, and this was actually an exercise that the committee undertook a couple of years ago now, but you can see again alignment with the goal setting exercises that are happening now. Project priorities are construction priority. Construction loans are the most desirable projects to advance, including those for multifamily developments and those for single family developments. Following in that order, down payment assistance, tenant-based rental assistance, construction grants, emergency repair programs, and new start programs. So that is the general priority of projects as they come through the process. With regard to eligible activities, again, this is the same list that you're seeing a couple of different ways. Eligible activities are construction. That includes, and this is an important point, site work and soft costs. This program has generally not supported site acquisition. It is anticipated that you would have some form of site control, whether that's actual ownership of the property or purchasing options at the time of application if you're going to seek construction loan funds. There is funding available under that construction umbrella for conversion of existing structures. That is not as common that we've had that, but we have been able to fund projects of that nature in the past. Again, down payment assistance, tenant-based rental assistance, particularly in connection with homelessness prevention, emergency repair of single family units for, again, in all categories, they're going to be income eligible clients. And then new start programs, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail about with regard to that section. It is important to point out that eligible activities must take place within Buncombe County. In prior years, for those of you who have participated in previous applications, you will note that certain programs and activities were restricted to be located outside of the City of Asheville's jurisdiction. That particular clause has been removed. So these activities can take place within both the City of Asheville and outside of that area, but intended to serve only residents of Buncombe County. Regarding the project and reimbursement timeframe, and this speaks to how you intend to fund your projects overall and how you intend to deliver your programs and projects. Here, you'll note that construction and conversion projects must be scheduled to break ground by January 31st of 2023 and begin requesting reimbursement by July 31st of 2023. So we recognize that that period may take longer, but due to the fact that these funds are being allocated in fiscal year 2023, we want to see projects that are actually going to be moving forward during that time frame. So as an applicant, an evaluation of the ability to deliver those timeframes is important. If your application would differ from that, you're going to need to highlight that in the application, and that may be a reason that another project would advance ahead of yours. And then all other projects must complete expenditures and request reimbursement by July 31st of 2023. And those would be programs and projects which aren't necessarily associated with construction. So we don't have that breaking ground criteria. The construction loan program, in terms of maximum loan amounts available, has changed. If you have applied in prior years, you'll recall that there was a maximum per unit actual dollar amount prescribed to the project. That can be complicated for a number of reasons and doesn't necessarily equate a project overall value equitably between smaller and larger projects. And so the cost caps have been adjusted to be a % of the cost per unit. It is 10% of the cost per unit for all projects as a baseline. That is increased to 20% of the cost per unit for 4% low-income housing tax credit projects as well. And then a critical difference and another new way to differentiate projects is if your project for a construction loan is solely targeting households less than 30% AMI, that maximum % loan amount or % cost amount for your loan may be waived. And so you can request for potentially more than 10 or 20% of your unit cost per unit. For units for sale, construction of units for sale, the terms have not changed. So they remain 5 years or until the property is transferred or sold, whichever occurs first, with a fully amortizing interest rate of 2%. So there's been no change in that particular loan offering. With regard to construction loan programs for units for rent, we do have a standard set of a standard set of loan options, and those are based on the year terms, and obviously the longer your term that you're seeking, the higher the interest rate. And in this case, annual principal and interest payments would be due for the standard offering. Any applicant may request an optional loan offering. There are two different options. I'll review each of them separately. So again, if you're constructing a unit for rent and seeking a loan, you may request interest payments with principal balloon only if you can demonstrate need for project viability. And again, there are various year terms with increasing interest rates, but this would be structured as an annual interest payment and principal balloon. I will note, both in this option and the next, that the request for interest-only payments would not guarantee an award of a loan on those terms. So this is a request to move beyond the standard offering, and that the applicant would need to be able to show a willingness to consider various approaches to support project viability, including deferring developer fees, among other things as appropriate. So this is a request here for an option or an exception to the standard offering, which will require some discussion between the applicant as they move forward in the request. There is a second option that may be requested, and this is new or different from what you've seen in prior years. So this would be requested in the case here for interest payments from cash flow with a principal balloon, provided that you as the applicant are pursuing low-income housing tax credits and or are producing a project targeting households at less than 30% AMI. The applicant would need to indicate that you desire these terms at the time of the application, and again, would need to demonstrate a need for the terms for project viability. So this is a 20-year term at an interest rate of 2%, annual interest payment from cash flow with a principal balloon. So this is probably the most relaxed or at least standard offering, but again, we're going to need to see these very specific opportunities being explored by the applicant in order to consider that. And then this is again a request. So requesting that doesn't necessarily guarantee that that will be awarded. So you should have a willingness to, again, consider other options and approaches for project viability. In terms of down payment assistance programs, so here again, we used to have a flat rate, a flat cap in terms of the dollar amount. There has been a change to do a maximum loan amount of 10% of the cost per affordable unit. So that is a change. Again, you're looking for income eligible home buyers. This is a non-forgivable loan, which is secured with a lien on the property being assisted. And then the term here that applies is that down payment assistance repayment will be due in the event the homeowner no longer lives in the unit, sells the units, or reverses that. I apologize. There is no interest rate charged on that particular loan. And we did provide clarity for those of you seeking a construction and down payment assistance application that you may submit one application with the amount of construction loan desired and indicate through the narratives in the application if a portion is to be directed as down payment assistance. That just prevents those of you who are doing a combination of construction and down payment assistance program requests from having to submit two separate applications. Tenant-based rental assistance, there has been no change to this program. It remains a maximum of $2,500 per household. Where the assistance exceeds $1,500 per household, that assistance would be for the purposes of eviction prevention. And this funding can be used for security and utility deposits, moving expenses, first month's rent, and eviction prevention generally. We continue to offer a construction grant program, though this has not been utilized at this point. We did leave a maximum cap here of a dollar figure of $25,000 per non-revenue generating unit, and the uses here are for unit construction. Again, so these are non-revenue generating units. If you are charging a rent or collecting any revenue from the tenants in a a development of any kind, then you would be revenue generating. But if there is a non-revenue generating activity where you would be housing individuals, similar to or thinking of a shelter type structure, this would be the pathway for your seeking funds. The emergency repair program, again, there has been no change to this particular offering. The maximum assistance remains $15,000 per unit. It is noted that repairs at $10,000 and up to $15,000 must be secured with a forgivable loan, a note and deed of trust, repayable within 10 years if the eligible homeowner sells or no longer occupies the unit. So there is a caveat for those larger and more expansive repairs that there would be a note and deed of trust. And finally, our New Start program, which has been in place for the last couple of cycles. So this is a maximum assistance of $25,000 as a grant. And the uses here are costs associated with the development and implementation of a new program, which provides opportunities for affordable and safe housing for healthy and thriving families and neighborhoods, and which is innovative in approach. The funding may include administrative and program implementation costs. Again, noting that projects that are purely administrative are less desirable projects, but certainly can be submitted, particularly as a part of this program offering. And at this point, I would open the floor to any questions from participants about the information that we've reviewed, or you having had the opportunity to review the program guidance, any questions that you may have about that particular document.
I have some questions.
Sure, Cassidy.
And maybe I requested a meeting with you, but maybe we won't have to do that if I can get these answered here. You answered one of them. So just to confirm, Habitat should submit a construction loan application and indicate in the narrative any amount that we'd like to stay in as DPA, correct?
That is correct. So we wanted to simplify that process. It also reduces the number of applications we have to process and present to the committee. So yes, the single construction application with the DPA indicated.
Perfect. Okay, so we have 46 units that need funding for the infrastructure. So I'm curious if it would be better to submit one larger application for all 46, or if it would be better to split those up over the next 2 funding cycles and ask for 23 units each.
So there is always an issue of the amount of funding available. If you could move forward with the project, with the timeframes for construction beginning, kind of those construction projects, we would like to, from the staff level, understand the whole need for the project. And it is certainly, again, a request doesn't necessarily equate to an allocation. So there is the potential that, you know, if you requested support for 46 units, that at the point in time that it's considered, a certain number of the units can be supported, but perhaps not all. So if there is a need for 46 units and you can move that forward in the timeframes, we would recommend you seek the request at that level.
Perfect, thank you. And then my final question is there a status update on the ARPA funded home repair program? Because this would impact our home repair ask for this funding cycle.
So we do not yet have a status update. For those of you on the call who may not be aware, the county, in terms of the Community Development Division, did receive an allocation of relief funds from the county as a whole. So we as a department received a kind of a sub-allocation in the amount of $400,000 to support emergency repair activities. That program will look somewhat different and include a larger per unit investment and will involve engaging partners. However, at this point, we haven't internally developed the necessary contracts and agreements. So that isn't being expedited, and partially as a result of those items that Sybil touched on earlier regarding our staffing issues. So as we hire staff, we should be able to move forward with that. What I would recommend for those participants on the call, and we are recording this so that it will be available to anyone who has an interest in that, is really looking at which projects of yours would fall under that cap threshold and pursue that here. We can certainly acknowledge that there's another grant funding, but that is really intended for those larger than $15,000 repairs. We're really going to be trying to target those more expensive repairs we haven't been able to impact in prior years with that particular program. So if that answers your question.
Hey, Matt, may I be next with a question?
Sure, go ahead, Celeste.
Thank you. And thank you to the county for the New Start grants, the one in previous fiscal year and the current one we have. And we're doing some new things, responding to COVID and tweaking our services and shifting and things like that. And when I'm trying to figure out on the slide that says the strategic goals program description, where it says this supports home ownership initiatives, including savings, credit building, and down payment assistance, which, that is just right in our wheelhouse. But for it to be new, I'm trying to figure out if there's a way in, because our services are very supportive of people striving to own homes and become home buyer ready. But once we get through this cycle, I don't want to feel like we're just pretending like we're doing something new just to get a New Start grant. But I also feel like our services are very vital to the home ownership efforts here in Buncombe County. So can you speak to that at all? Is it an offline conversation that we need to have?
No, I mean, I think that you bring up a good point. And the New Start program was created to try to address or, I guess, incentivize, creative thinking, really new ideas and fresh things. And we haven't awarded an application where the request or awarded funds in response to an application where the request did not seem to be new and innovative. So I will say that, the applications that we received and the projects that we funded have been what we would consider to be new activity. Over time, that will become more challenging for perhaps entities that have received New Start funding. But the aspect and the goal of that offering was never intended to be kind of a long-term administrative support. So I do recognize that that will be challenging. I think, and Sybil had referenced this earlier, this program is regularly evolving, and we will be looking when we have those meetings with external partners. We're going to have an initial meeting and then look to have more regular recurring meetings, either annually at minimum, biannually, meaning twice a year, not once every 2 years, but biannually or quarterly, just to kind of get feedback. Some of that will include discussions about program offerings themselves. So the intent of this particular program is not to provide ongoing administrative support, but rather to initiate new ideas. But certainly, as you're working through an application, if you want to ask staff if we were to review what you're asking as a New Start, that's certainly something we're willing to do, both here or offline as well. So it has to be new. It has to be new to you.
Okay. And y'all have been great, the last 2 cycles. And so we got some good stuff going on. And so it's like, okay, so, I don't want to just chase the money and say, oh, okay, we're going to pretend like this is new. And it's really just, that's just not right. But then it's also like, okay, we don't fit under the Rachel and Angelin's strategic partnership grants anymore if what we're doing is housing focused. So then that kicks it back into your department. And so there's like, okay, where's our financial capabilities that help people get ready for housing? Where does that fit in the county's funding cycle? So thank you very much. We'll continue the conversation.
Yes, and the other thing I will just mention, if you're undertaking kind of a new partnership, perhaps with another entity, that's something to consider as a New Start. So if you're exploring partnering with someone else, okay. In terms of like the services that you're offering, if you're partnering with another entity and helping to get something like that off of the ground, new partnerships we would consider to be a New Start as well. So that might be helpful for everybody on the call to know.
Yeah, sorry, Celeste. Celeste's team has been working with the MHO's home ownership program for years and years, so it might not be considered new, but they do a fabulous job of preparing our homeowners for their new homes and mortgages. So thanks, Celeste. And Matt, since I'm the only one on from MHO, I do appreciate if you send the recording out or your slideshow so I could distribute it to everybody. So thanks.
Yes, and with regard to the recording, I'm not sure what platform that we'll be able to share that with at this point. We are recording it, and then we'll figure out how to disseminate that. So we'll note your request, Rich, to get that out to your team.
The slideshow will be just fine, though, if you can't, if the recording isn't in a good format for everybody.
Sure. Are there any other? Oh, go ahead.
One more, and this you might not have an answer, but do you have any idea on a second round of ARPA opening at any point soon?
So I do not have any real specifics surrounding that. That whole funding process is handled through our strategic partnership department. We have worked, closely together, but I don't know their exact schedule. I do believe that the board will be presented with some information either at their upcoming meeting or the early meeting in February about a schedule for kind of how they'll go through this next process and round, and whether existing applications will be entertained or if they can be revised and new applications. So I think there's a whole lot of discussion that's about to happen surrounding that issue. And if anyone on the call or viewing this later has any questions, they can reach out to the Strategic Partnerships Division. Rachel Nygaard and Sarah Josh are the main points of contact for that particular fund if you have specific questions for them. All right, well, if there are no other questions, we will move into the second phase. And again, for those of you who are familiar with this portal and don't necessarily need the overview, you can feel free to leave, but I always like people to watch it just as a recollection. And we will highlight a few things that might be different in the application from in prior years. But in terms of the application, there are two pathways to get there. The first is by visiting buncombecounty.org/affordable housing. And I'll show you that site in just a minute, or going either directly to buncombecounty.org/apply. So I'm going to stop sharing and then switch to my web browser so that I can actually walk you through some of that particular application. All right. So as I mentioned, and I hope everyone can see my web browser here. If you go to the buncombecounty.org/affordable housing page, there is a banner at the top of that page with some general information about the application. You can download the project description, requirements, and guidelines, and you can also click on the Apply Now button. So that link actually takes you to buncombecounty.org/apply. This is the login page. If your organization, you may want to verify, perhaps if you're new within your organization, if there is an existing login and password that you can use for your organization, go ahead and use that. If not, you'll need to create a new account. And there's a process for doing so. It's pretty straightforward. It includes your organizational name and tax ID number, and some additional information about you and the team there. What I will say is if you already have an existing account associated with your tax ID number, that may create an issue for you. So you'll find out if you go through this process if perhaps an existing account does exist, then we can work through those issues. So please let us know if you have any trouble, if you are trying to create an account at any point in that process. But I would encourage you, if you have not already, to go ahead and create your account or go through your regular login process in order to access the application and make sure you're able to work through that. Right, so I have an account here. I'm just going to log in so that you can see what the application will look like. For those of you who haven't applied before, you're not going to see anything happening down here.
Matt, am I the only one on from an agency now?
briefly kicked me out. And so once you do that, it's going
yes,
to...
Rich, you are.
Okay, Matt, I've been on the system before, and so as most of our team members, so we can cut it short here and save you and William and James's time, and say you don't have to go into anymore. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, you guys have a good Friday, and hopefully a snowy weekend, and we'll hopefully put some good applications into you guys.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Matt, for the sake of the recording, do you want to finish going through it?
I can just go through a few more items. That way, if anyone who hasn't participated before does want to review the recording, we can. So let's go ahead with that.
Great.
All right, we return to screen share here. So you'll click on apply here. I have already entered into an application, so I'm going to need to do edit application. So at any point you can begin the application and edit it multiple times until you're ready for submittal. At the beginning, I recommend that you close all of these tabs. It just makes it a little less overwhelming to go through. If you're new to the application portal, and it will actually make it much easier for you to determine which segments of the application you're going to need to complete. So I'm just going to quickly go through and hide those. The overview is a lot of the information that we covered earlier for you. It includes when the applications are due and just some additional general information about the application. All applicants will need to complete the applicant information portal, and if a piece of information is required, it will be starred. So it will not let you submit unless you've answered or entered into all starred categories. Your project summary, again, all applicants will complete that. It's the project name, address if applicable, total cost, the kind of funding you're seeking, and which type of project that you're really looking to fund. And here is your first opportunity to provide a narrative description of what you're doing. I will caution all applicants that anything you put in your application may encumber your ultimate contract that would result from any funding allocation. So be specific in your project narrative and make those things upon which you can deliver. Those are the pieces that are important for consideration in terms of receiving an award, and those will become expectations kind of long-term for your project. You will be asked, again, a number of questions just to see how this project particularly aligns to the program offering. And also verification that you're providing services to the desired and targeted household and income levels. There are a number of questions related to demographics of your project or program. These are particularly surrounding certain categories, including individuals who are age 55 or older, individuals who have a disability, individuals who are hard to house or homeless, individuals who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, individuals who are justice involved, and or if the individuals being served by the project or program receive any kind of vouchers. Project team, again, is going to be required for all applicants. So we're going to need to understand who is a part of your project. Detailing past experience, these should be relevant to the project that you're seeking. So for example, if you're proposing to construct a multifamily affordable housing development, we're going to want to see multifamily affordable housing developments. If you're seeking tenant-based rental assistance, we're going to see prior program years offerings, information of that nature. So it should be pertinent to the project that you are applying for in this round. If you do not have previous past experience, you will not be able to include that. That will certainly not strengthen your application, but we don't want project information which isn't relevant to the application. The construction project. So if you are pursuing a construction project, you'll need to complete all of the information in this section for your construction project. You'll notice these are not starred. However, that's because this application has a number of different programs you could be seeking. So you will need to complete each section related to your particular project. So there is a different portal for each one: construction projects, down payment assistance, emergency repair, tenant-based rental assistance, and New Start program. So those are the areas that you're going to need to complete, dependent on which application you are pursuing. Again, as a reminder, if you are doing a combined construction loan, where you would like for part of that to transition to a down payment assistance loan, you will only complete this upper portion. And indicate in your narratives as appropriate how much of the construction loan request you are seeking to transition to down payment assistance. There is a conflicts of interest section where you'll need to provide information here. It's just verifying you don't have a conflict of interest. This section, which is attachments, there is actually a link where you'll go and download documents. These will be ones that include the program guidelines, but also include specific forms that we expect all applicants to produce and provide. So you'll download these forms, complete the forms that you are downloading, and then upload them back into each of these categories. So they include a project budget, which is a template that we provide for you. It helps us have ease in comparing projects, conflict of interest certification, as well as your authorization statement. So these are signed documents that we just need to have and retain on file. Additionally, all organizations will need to provide us a copy of their organizational chart, articles of incorporation, the resumes of the staff who will manage the project, a copy of the most recent independent audit, and the most recent financial statement or federal tax return. Nonprofit organizations will also need to provide their IRS tax documentation or determination letter, current bylaws, and current board of directors. If you are a for-profit applicant, we'll need your partnership agreement and business references with contact information. Construction loan requests also require some additional attachments beyond those, including a site map, a site location map, any purchase agreement or the deed if you're holding it already, floor plans and sketches of buildings, elevation, design or drawing of dwelling units, as well as floor plans to scale. All applicants also have the opportunity to submit additional attachments, and they can be uploaded here. We do have, as you see in all of our file uploads, a maximum number of megabytes that are permitted. So for example, you as an applicant may wish to provide a detailed pro forma in your own format, or provide some additional information about the project which wasn't previously provided. This is your opportunity to upload those files. So the caveat here is we do have the maximums. If for some reason you are needing to provide a file which is larger than the maximums allow, then you will need to reach out to William High, and his contact information is included in the overview above, in order to request a method by which to provide that kind of submittal. So again, each time you enter, you'll have the opportunity to save the application up and until the deadline, at which point you will need to submit the application. I will point out that this is a hard and fast closure. So if an application is not received by 5 p.m. on February the 11th, the application will still be open here, but will not be able to be submitted, and no late applications will be accepted. Finally, we only do accept at this point online applications. We will not accept any applications which are mailed or otherwise submitted. And that completes our overview of the application process. I will stop sharing my screen and switch to the last slide just for your reference. Just one moment. All right. So given that the participants have left at this point, we won't entertain questions, but I will note that if you have additional questions about your specific application, the program in general, the application portal, or anything related to this request for project proposals, you can certainly reach out to me. My contact information is provided on this slide. I will indicate that the best way to reach and generate a response most quickly will be by email, given the nature of the ongoing pandemic and the potential that there will be remote working happening over the next few weeks. So again, primary point of contact will be by email. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions.